The Nintendo Entertainment System is probably the most recognizable console in video game history, and the NES library is absolutely massive. There are thousands of games for the gray box that brought video games out of its depression and helped shape gaming into what it is today. But for every awesome game, there are about 15 horrible games. It will be nearly impossible to make a list of the 10 worst NES games of all time. Luckily, I'm here to give you the 10 best, which is still extremely difficult. Remember, with a library of games this ginormous, there's a pretty good chance that everyone's list will be different. So don't complain if your favorite games aren't here. Just kick back, relax, and welcome back to 1985. The Boy and His Blob was a sleeper on my list. When compiling my favorites, I didn't think it would make the final cut. But after a trip down memory lane, I remembered just how great it was. Basically, the boy feeds his alien pet Blob different types of jelly bean, and the Blob will transform into different things. The Blob will transform into anything from a trampoline to a brick wall. Each transformation could be used to solve different platforming puzzles, to help guide the boy and his blobs to the planet Blobolonia, where you must defeat the evil emperor. The gameplay is really intuitive, and even though it's really kooky, this is a fun game. You should try it out.
Blades of Steel.
Blades of Steel was the first sports game I ever owned. I'm not a huge hockey fan, but this game was absolutely addicting. Every time I think of this game, I still hear that crazy announcer. Blades of Steel had the best controls of any sports game I ever played on the NES. It was so simple, just pass, move, and shoot. I also loved overtime. I used to try to make regulation end as a tie on purpose. That way I could do a penalty shootout, which allowed precision shooting and blocking. Every time you score a goal, you're treated with a celebration dance, and if you win the game, the whole team celebrates. But I haven't mentioned the best part of Blades of Steel. Bump someone 3 to 4 times, and suddenly, fight! The ice rink turns into a boxing ring. Players can block or punch high and low, and whoever loses has to sit out for a few minutes. It doesn't matter who started it, it only matters who wins. This is power play to the extreme. Contra is probably my favorite run-and-gun shooter of all time. The action in Contra is completely insane. Players are dropped immediately out of a helicopter and into the battle. You start out with a simple gun, but you can quickly advance by picking up one of the many different guns on each level. But all of those guns don't matter, as long as you can get your dirty little hands on the spreader, one of the best guns in all of video games. You need it too, because Contra is an extremely difficult game. You will die countless times. One hit from the bullet equals one lost life. This game is nearly impossible to beat, unless you have the Konami code. Up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start. The Konami code was made famous in Contra because it gave you 30 lives. But even with 30 lives, this game will still beat you a bunch of times before you can figure out where the enemy spawns. Then you can blaze through the game at top speed, until of course you get to the 3D levels. They're an interesting concept, but the 3D levels slow down the pace of the game way too much. Plus, the 3D levels are a lot harder than the normal stages. They are definitely the lower of the game, but the breathtaking, colossal bosses make up for any and all cons. You should definitely try this game. The Little Pink Puffball was fantastic in his first home console game. Kirby's Adventure was a late NES game released in 1993, but it was one of the best. A future Nintendo mascot, Kirby had the ability to float in the air and of course swallow his enemies. Then he could take the enemy's power and use it to his own advantage. Suddenly, Kirby could become whatever he swallowed. You know that saying, you are what you eat? Well, that's Kirby. If Kirby ate a fire enemy, he became Fire Kirby. If he ate a ninja, he became Ninja Kirby, and so on and so forth. Some of the things Kirby can become are really awesome, but extremely odd. Kirby's swallowing antics made him one of the coolest but also weirdest characters in gaming. Sometimes I wonder, what would happen to Kirby if he swallowed candy? Kirby's Adventure is probably the easiest game on my list, but it's not so easy once you get to the final boss. His moves and attacks are very difficult. He kinda reminds me of Taboo from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. They bear a strange resemblance in appearance and attack moves. I guess they're Hal's evil twins. At first glance, I thought Battletoads looked like an extremely worthless game. Come on now, Toads with sunglasses? Someone's trying way too hard to be cool. And the Battletoads themselves? They have the weirdest names in video game history. Rash, zits, and pimple. Before I even played the game, I thought these toads were lame. But after the first level, my whole perspective on the game changed. These toads were awesome. The over-the-top, insane moves are hilarious. When you punch, your fist becomes as big as King Kong's. When you kick, your foot turns into a 50-pound boot. You can slam enemies into the ground, pick them up, and then throw them out of the screen. Aww, is that piranha plant bothering you? No problem. Just turn into a 2-ton boulder and slam into its face. I soon realized that it's the game's crazy premise that makes it like no other. The main complaint about Battletoads is its insane difficulty. But what do you expect? You're an amphibian fighting pigs, crows, and rats. The original Metroid was one of the largest games on the NES. You just can't beat it in one sitting. Most games in 1986 were arcade-type re-releases, or games that were just meant for easy pick-up-and-play fun. But Metroid was much more. It turned out to be a huge story that would spawn off one of Nintendo's most storied franchises and one of the coolest video game characters of all time, Samus. The game was filled with great bosses, awesome weapons and power-ups, and the amazing Morph Ball that transformed Samus into a small ball that could easily get through tight spaces and secret passageways. Of course, the biggest surprise came when you finished the game and Samus took off her spacesuit? That's right, this whole time you've been playing as an all-powerful space bounty hunter, and she's a girl. The female was saving the day for once, instead of needing to be saved. It's sad that nearly every gamer knows about this now. No one will ever get that amazingly shocking feeling again. Surprise, surprise, it's not number 1. Every time I add a game to my list, I describe the game and tell everyone why I love it so much. But with a controversial pick like this, I feel like I should tell you some reasons why I don't like it. Super Mario Bros. 3 feels out of place to me. Like Super Mario Bros. 2 before it, it just doesn't feel like Mario. The giant level is weird, I don't like the cards, money, and odd power-ups. What? So you're telling me raccoons can fly? Okay, so if raccoons can fly, that means this bear should be able... What the heck? A statue? What's this, a potato sack? Don't get me wrong, I still think Super Mario Bros. 3 is a fantastic game, which is why it's number 4 on my list. I do love the controls, the bosses, hammer rolls, minigames, and the airships with that iconic theme. Overall, it's an extraordinary game, but I soon dropped SMB3 and went back to the classic. The game that started it all, Super Mario Bros. Is an unparalleled masterpiece. At the time, most games were all about high scores and hundreds of quarters, but Super Mario Bros. Changed everything. Now there's an objective: save the princess and stop Bowser's reign of terror. Super Mario Bros. Was one of the first platformers and by far the best. It was even the first game to have a twist in the storyline. In another castle? What? At the time, Super Mario Bros. Was one of the best looking games. And call me crazy, but I actually like the graphical appeal of Super Mario Bros. Over Super Mario Bros. 3. Everyone knows this game. Everyone knows level 1-1. I could probably beat it with my eyes closed. Super Mario Bros. Had perfect controls, revolutionary gameplay, and an awesome soundtrack and much more. Of all the games on my list, I played Super Mario Bros. More than any other. One word can describe this amazing game: classic. Mega Man 2 was the first Mega Man game I ever played. I love this game. Out of all the games on my list, Mega Man 2 would probably be the easiest for me to pick up and play right now. The option to pick whatever stage you wanted was still a new concept at the time, and I really wish more games implemented this today. I was so excited when I found out that I could use the defeated boss's weapons. I immediately thought of Kirby, but this is way cooler. The controls were perfect, the weapons were awesome, and suddenly, Mega Man became one of my favorite video game characters. And of course, Mega Man 2 has one of the most epic soundtracks in all of video games. The most impressive game on the NES, The Legend of Zelda, was an absolutely massive game. It was the first game to come with the save feature that didn't use codes, and thank goodness for that. With 9 dungeons and so many secret hideaways, Zelda would have been impossible without it. The Legend of Zelda has so many great weapons like a sword, boomerang, bow and arrow, and more. You can pick up hundreds of rupees to buy a torch, more bombs, arrows, etc. The Legend of Zelda was a game way ahead of its time, and is forever implanted in my heart as my favorite NES game and the closest game to perfection the NES ever had to offer. The Legend of Zelda is perhaps the greatest video game franchise ever, and its humble beginning in 1986 was the best start to a franchise that anyone could ever dream of.